The rescue. When everything went wrong, Commander Elena Vasquez had always believed that space was vast enough to hide from your mistakes. She was wrong. The reconnaissance ship Silent Arrow tumbled through the atmosphere of Kepler 442b like a broken bird, its hull screaming against alien air. Warning lights painted the cockpit red as Elena fought with controls that no longer responded to her touch. The mission had been simple enough. Survey the outer rim worlds for potential colonial sites. Avoid contact with hostile species. Report back in 30 days. Elena had been doing these runs for 8 years without incident, but today, the Krillian patrol ships had found her first. The crash came hard and fast. Elena's harness kept her alive, but barely. When she finally crawled from the wreckage, blood running down her face, she found herself in a world that defied every briefing she'd ever received. The sky burned orange overhead, and crystalline trees stretched toward 3 moons that hung like watchful eyes. The air tasted of copper and ozone. Elena's left leg was definitely broken. Her communication array was dead. The emergency beacon might work, but it would take weeks for any Earthship to reach this sector. She had maybe 3 days of water and emergency rations. The math was simple and cruel. She was going to die alone on an alien world. The sound of salvation. Elena had been crawling through the crystal forest for 2 hours when she heard the singing. It wasn't like any music she knew. The voices rose and fell like wind through mountain passes, harmonies that seemed to come from the very air itself. She should have been afraid. Every training manual said that unknown alien contact meant potential danger. Instead, she felt something she hadn't experienced since childhood: peace. They found her collapsed against a tree that hummed with inner light. 3 beings, rough, humanoid, but clearly not human. Their skin was pale blue, translucent enough to show the network of silver veins beneath. They had no hair, but delicate fronds grew from their scalps like living crowns. Their eyes were larger than human eyes, the color of deep water, and filled with something Elena recognized despite the alien features: compassion. The tallest of them knelt beside her. When he spoke, his voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Elena's universal translator, one of the few systems still working, turned his words into something she could understand. "You are injured, Skywalker. We will help." Elena wanted to object, to maintain proper first contact protocols, to do something official and military. Instead, she just nodded and let unconsciousness take her. A world of wonders. Elena woke in a place that looked like a dream made real. The Zephyrian village was built inside and around the crystal trees themselves. Homes grew from the living rock, their walls transparent but somehow private. Streams of clean water flowed through channels carved into the ground, and everywhere she looked, the Zephyrians moved with a grace that made human movement seem clumsy by comparison. The healer who tended her was named Leth. He was old by Zephyrian standards, his translucent skin marked with patterns that Elena learned were signs of wisdom and experience. His touch could ease pain without drugs, and somehow he had set her broken leg so perfectly that she could already feel it beginning to heal. "Your people?" Elena asked during her second week of recovery. "Do you have warriors? Soldiers?" Lith's expression grew sad. "We had guardians once, but the Krillians came 50 cycles ago. Those who fought were the first to die. Now we survive by hiding, by being too small to notice." Elena learned about the Krillian Empire during the long hours of her recovery. They were a militaristic species that had conquered dozens of worlds across this sector. The Zephyrians, with their peaceful nature and incredible healing abilities, had become valuable slaves. Krillian raiders would sweep down on villages, taking the young and healthy to work in their mines and factories. Those who resisted were killed as examples. "How many of you are left?" Elena asked. "On this world, perhaps 10,000, scattered across the hidden places. In all the galaxy?" Lith's silver blood vessels pulsed with what Elena had learned was deep sorrow. We do not know. Elena spent her days learning about Zephyrian culture. They were artists and healers, philosophers and dreamers. They had once been a spacefaring people, but the Krillians had destroyed their ships and their spaceports. Now they lived in fear, their magnificent civilization reduced to hiding in forests and caves. She also learned that they were dying, not just from Krillian raids, but from something deeper. Without purpose, without hope, the Zephyrians were simply fading away. Their birth rate was dropping. Their songs were becoming funeral dirges. "You give us hope, Skywalker," Lith told her one evening as they sat beneath stars that weren't her stars. "Your people among the stars, they are warriors, yes?" "Some of us," Elena admitted. "Then perhaps—" Lith trailed off, as if afraid to voice what he was thinking. Elena understood. "You want us to help you fight back. The Krillians fear only strength. Your ship, before it fell, it was armed, yes? Your people have weapons that could match theirs?" Elena thought about Earth's military capabilities. Humanity had spent centuries perfecting the art of war, first against each other, then against the hostile universe itself. They had weapons that could crack planets and shields that could turn away stars, but they also had rules, treaties, a whole complex web of interstellar politics that made intervention in local conflicts nearly impossible. "It's complicated," she said finally. The last song. Elena's rescue came 37 days after her crash. The Earth Defense Force cruiser Valiant Dawn had followed her beacon signal to the planet's surface. She should have been overjoyed to see the familiar blue and silver hull descending from the sky. Instead, she felt like she was losing her family. The Zephyrian village gathered to see her off. They brought gifts, crystalline sculptures that sang when the wind touched them, healing salves that could cure any wound, and songs recorded in crystal matrices that would play for 1,000 years. But mostly, they brought their hopes. "You will speak for us, Skywalker," Lyth said, as Elena prepared to board the shuttle. "You will tell your people what you have seen." "I promise," Elena said, and meant it. She was halfway to the shuttle when the Krillian attack ship screamed overhead. Elena had studied the Krillians during her time with the Zephyrians, but seeing them in action was different. Their ships were black metal and sharp edges, designed to inspire fear. They moved like predators, and they attacked like the cowards they were. The village had perhaps 30 seconds of warning before the first plasma blasts began to fall. Elena watched in horror as the crystal homes shattered, as Zephyrians ran screaming through streets that had known only peace. The Earth shuttle lifted off immediately, its pilot following strict non-interference protocols. Elena could have been on it. She could have been safe. Instead, she ran toward the burning village. The price of kindness. Elena found Lyth in the ruins of his healing center. A plasma blast had taken most of the building, and falling crystal had crushed his lower body. His translucent blood mixed with pulverized stone, but he was still alive, still trying to sing comfort to the injured children around him. "Skywalker," he whispered when he saw her, "you should have gone." Elena knelt beside him, cradling his head in her lap. Around them, the Krillian raiders were moving through the village with methodical efficiency. They weren't here to kill everyone. They were harvesting. Young Zephyrians were being dragged toward transport ships in energy shackles. The old and wounded were being shot where they lay. "I gave you a promise," Elena said. "I don't break those." Lyth's eyes were growing dim, but he managed to smile. "Your people, they keep their word?" "The good ones do." "Then perhaps this is not the end." His voice was barely a whisper now. "The young ones they take, some survive, some remember. Tell your people, tell them we saved one Skywalker. Perhaps they will save us all." Lyth died in her arms, his last breath escaping as a note of pure, heartbreaking music. Elena held his body until the Krillian raiders found her. They laughed when they saw her, chattering in their harsh language. One of them raised a weapon, clearly intending to kill her for sport. Elena stared at him with eyes that held more fury than fear. The shot never came. The Krillian ship's proximity sensors had detected the approaching Earth cruiser. The raiders were cowards at heart, unwilling to risk a fight with an unknown military vessel. They took their slaves and fled, leaving Elena alone among the ashes. When the rescue team finally reached her, they found Elena sitting beside Lith's body, singing one of the Zephyrian songs in her broken human voice. She looked up at the approaching soldiers with eyes that had changed forever. "Commander Vasquez," the team leader said, "we need to go. This is a hostile zone." Elena stood slowly, her hands still covered with Lith's silver blood. "Yes," she said quietly, "it certainly is." As the shuttle lifted off from the burning village, Elena made herself watch until the crystal trees disappeared beneath the clouds. She committed every detail to memory: the smoke, the broken homes, the bodies of the kindest people she had ever known. The Zephyrians had saved her life without asking for anything in return. They had given her hope, healing, and friendship when she had nothing to offer but her broken humanity. Now it was time to find out what humanity was really worth. The awakening, the bureaucracy of betrayal. Earth Defense Force headquarters was a monument to military efficiency, all gleaming surfaces and crisp uniforms. Elena stood in the briefing room 6 weeks after her rescue, facing a panel of admirals and generals who represented the combined military might of humanity. She had expected this moment to be her vindication, her chance to turn the horror she had witnessed into action. She was wrong. General Morrison, the head of Outer Rim Operations, leaned back in his chair with the expression of a man who had heard this story before. "Commander Vasquez, your report makes for compelling reading. However, we need to discuss the larger strategic picture." Elena's jaw tightened. "Sir, with respect, the strategic picture includes the systematic genocide of an entire species. The Zephyrians," Admiral Chen interjected, consulting her tablet, "are not a member species of the Galactic Cooperation Treaty. According to our intelligence, the Krillian Empire has legitimate salvage rights to that sector." "Legitimate?" Elena couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. "They're enslaving entire populations. I watch them murder civilians, sir. Children." "Internal affairs of a sovereign empire," Morrison said dismissively. "Our mandate is clear, Commander. We protect human interests and human allies. The Zephyrians are neither." Elena had prepared for resistance, but not indifference. She activated her personal recorder, playing the crystal matrix that contained Lith's final song. The haunting melody filled the sterile briefing room, and for a moment, even the hardened military officers seemed moved. Then Morrison switched off the device. "Touching," he said, "but irrelevant to defense policy. The Krillians have 17 battle fleets and control 43 star systems. We have treaties with them regarding shipping lanes and resource extraction. Starting a war over one minor species would jeopardize human lives and human interests." Admiral Chen nodded. "Your emotional attachment is understandable, Commander, but you were clearly compromised by your extended contact with the aliens. I'm recommending you for psychological evaluation and 6 months of administrative leave." Elena stared at them, these representatives of humanity who spoke of treaties and strategic interests, while genocide continued in the dark between the stars. "They saved my life," she said quietly. "And we're grateful for your survival," Morrison replied. "But that doesn't change our strategic priorities." Elena walked out of the briefing room with her career effectively ended and her faith in military leadership completely shattered. But as she made her way through the corridors of headquarters, she noticed something interesting. Other officers were watching her with expressions she recognized. Not all of humanity's warriors had forgotten what honor meant. The debt collectors, Elena's apartment became an unofficial meeting place for the discontented. It started with Captain Marcus Webb, her former squadron leader, who had served with her for 6Y years. Then came Major Sarah Kim, a Marine who had lost her entire unit to Krillian raiders 2 years earlier. Staff Sergeant Diego Okonkwo brought the news that 3 more Zephyrian colonies had been harvested, while Earth Command debated policy. Within 2 months, Elena had assembled the core of what they would later call the debt collectors. They were career military officers who had reached the same conclusion. Sometimes the chain of command was a chain that held you back from doing what was right. The name came from Elena herself during one of their late-night planning sessions. "We owe them," she said simply. "The Zephyrians saved my life, and in return, I promised to help them. That's a debt, and debts get collected." The logistics were staggering. Elena's group had access to maybe 50 volunteers and 2 obsolete frigates. The Krillian Empire had fleets, established supply lines, and fortified positions throughout the sector. It should have been impossible. But Elena had learned something during her time with the Zephyrians that her military training had never taught her. Sometimes the impossible happened when people stopped calculating the odds and started believing in something larger than themselves. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Jennifer Park, a xenobiologist who had been studying Elena's medical scans, made a discovery that changed everything. The Zephyrian healing techniques had left traces in Elena's cellular structure. Her bones were 300% stronger than before. Her reflexes were enhanced. Her immune system was operating at levels that human medicine considered impossible. "The Zephyrians didn't just heal you," Dr. Park explained. "They improved you, and if I can isolate the process." Within weeks, Park had developed a treatment that could enhance human soldiers to superhuman levels. It required Zephyrian crystal matrices to water RK, which meant they needed to return to Kepler 442b. But it also meant that Elena's small force could punch far above their weight class. The volunteers came from across human space. Some were active military, others were veterans who had found civilian life too tame. They came because Elena's story had spread through back channels and underground networks, carried by people who still believed that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its weapons or its fleets, but its willingness to fight for others who couldn't fight for themselves. The return. The fleet that approached Kepler 442b 6 months after Elena's rescue didn't look like much. 3 frigates, 2 converted cargo haulers, and a mobile repair station. Maybe 200 volunteers total, armed with whatever weapons they could scrounge or steal. No official Earth backing, no government support, no hope of reinforcement if things went wrong. Elena stood on the bridge of her flagship, the converted merchant vessel Promise Keeper, and watched the familiar orange sky grow larger on the view screen. Beside her, Captain Webb was coordinating the attack plan with the other ship commanders. "Reconnaissance shows 7 Krillian installations across the continent," Webb reported. "Processing centers, slave camps, and a major military base in the northern mountains." Elena nodded. They had been studying Krillian tactics for months, looking for weaknesses. The aliens were efficient but predictable. They relied on superior technology and overwhelming force. They weren't prepared for opponents who were willing to die for something other than conquest. "Remember," Elena broadcast to all ships, "we're not here for glory or revenge. We're here to collect a debt. Every Zephyrian we free, every Krillian installation we destroy, every message we send, it all serves one purpose. The galaxy needs to know that some species don't stand alone." The attack began at dawn across 3 continents simultaneously. Elena led the assault on the largest slave camp, a sprawling compound. Lex built around what had once been a Zephyrian city. The crystal spires still rose toward the sky, but now they were surrounded by barbed wire and guard towers. Elena's enhanced soldiers moved like ghosts through the Krillian defenses. The alien guards had never faced opponents who could leap 30 feet, see in complete darkness, and shrug off energy weapon hits that would kill normal humans. The Zephyrian enhancement process had turned Elena's volunteers into something beyond human limits. But it was more than physical enhancement that drove them. Elena watched her people fight with a fury she had never seen in conventional warfare. They fought for Lith, for the children who had been dragged away in shackles, for the principle that kindness should be rewarded, not punished. The liberation. Elena found the Zephyrian survivors in underground cells beneath the processing center. Hundreds of them, their translucent skin dulled by malnutrition and despair. Many of them were children, torn from their families and forced to work in toxic mining operations. They looked at Elena's soldiers with the blank stare of people who had given up hope. Then one of the children, a young Zephyrian girl with silver patterns across her forehead, began to sing. It was Lith's song, the one he had taught Elena during her recovery. Other voices joined in, and suddenly the prison cells were filled with the sound that Elena remembered from her first night in the Crystal Forest. The sound of hope. The liberation took 18 hours of continuous fighting. Elena's enhanced soldiers carved through Krillian positions like avenging angels, while overhead, the small human fleet engaged the alien patrol ships in running battles across the system. They lost the cargo hauler's second chance to a Krillian cruiser, but not before her crew managed to evacuate 300 Zephyrian slaves from an orbital platform. When the smoke cleared, Elena stood in the ruins of the largest slave camp, surrounded by over 2,000 freed Zephyrians. They looked at her with the same expression Lith had worn, not just gratitude, but recognition. They knew she had kept her promise. The young Zephyrian girl who had started the singing approached Elena shyly. In halting English, she said, "You are the Skywalker who knew our healer." "I knew Lith," Elena confirmed. "He asked me to remember." "We remember too," the girl said. "We remember that when we saved one human, all the humans came back to save us." The New Alliance, the Battle of Kepler 442b, as the historians would later call it, lasted 3 days total. Elena's debt collectors had freed over 8,000 Zephyrian slaves, destroyed 17 Krillian installations, and captured enough alien technology to give Earth's scientists years of study material. More importantly, they had sent a message that echoed across the galaxy. Humanity didn't abandon its friends. The political fallout was immediate and intense. Earth Command disavowed Elena's actions, the Galactic Council called for her arrest, and the Krillian Empire demanded reparations. Elena didn't care. She had found something more valuable than official approval. She had found her true purpose. Within a year, the debt collectors had grown into an official organization, funded by private donations and staffed by volunteers from dozens of species. They had a simple mission statement. When civilization failed the innocent, they would be there. Elena established their first permanent base on Kepler 442b in the ruins of the village where Lith had died. The Zephyrians built a memorial there, a crystal spire that sang with the voices of all those who had been lost. But it also sang with the voices of those who had been saved and those who had done the saving. The memorial bore an inscription in Zephyrian script that translated roughly as, "For the Skywalker who remembered her promise." But Elena insisted on a second inscription, in English, that she thought better captured the truth of what had happened. "They saved one human, so we came back to save them all." The debt, Elena reflected as she watched human and Zephyrian children play together in the crystal forests, had been paid in full. But the real gift wasn't the payment. It was the discovery that some debts were worth owing, and some promises were worth everything it took to keep them. In the end, that was what made humanity special in the galaxy. Not their weapons or their technology, but their stubborn insistence that kindness should never go unanswered, and that the innocent should never stand alone, even if it meant standing against the universe itself.